Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to the stories that matter here on the North Fork of Long Island, and sometimes far beyond. Some of our guests are rooted here by generations, others join us from elsewhere to share their work, their perspective, or their connection to the community, but all bring something that resonates, something that adds to the ongoing conversation. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 179, we're joined by two people who've devoted their lives to protecting the land that sustains us. John V.H. Halsey, who is the president and founder of the Peconic Land Trust, an organizer that for more than 4 decades has led efforts to preserve Long Island's farmland, natural spaces, and water quality. Since 1983, John has helped safeguard tens of thousands of acres, ensuring that the East End remains not only beautiful, but productive and alive. Joining him is Dan Heston, Director of Agricultural Programs at the Trust. A lifelong farmer and mentor, Dan oversees Farms for the Future, a groundbreaking initiative that helps new and established growers access affordable land, resources, and training. Together, John and Dan are shaping the next generation of sustainable farming on Long Island, balancing preservation, innovation, and community. In this conversation, we talk about what first inspired John to create the Peconic Land Trust, the urgent challenges facing local agriculture, and the creative ways the Trust is helping farmers stay on the land. We also hear about the Growing Farmers documentary, the Case House Project, and what gives both men hope for the future of farming on the East End. So I hope you enjoy episode 179 with John V.H. Halsey and Dan Heston. This episode was recorded June 18th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. I'm really looking forward to talking to you both.
Our pleasure. Great to be here.
Thank you. And just in the beginning, I'd like to if we could do a little background about both of you. John, if you wanted to start giving us just a little background about yourself.
Sure. Well, my name is John V.H. Halsey, to distinguish myself from other John Halseys, because there are many Halseys on the South Fork, particularly in Southampton town. My family goes back to the origins of the town, so I'm 12th generation on the South Fork.
Wow.
Lots of my ancestors were farmers. A lot of the early farming was subsistence farming. It wasn't until the 1800s, maybe late 1700s, when there were vegetables and other products exported. But it really started out with survival when the settlers came here and worked. At least on the South Fork, the Shinnecock people were important to our survival, especially in the early generations. So call out to that part of our cultural history as an island are the indigenous people here. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in Southampton, went to public schools there, and I worked on a farm for a Halsey farm, but like a 8th cousin once removed, because there are so many of us. But I carried irrigation pipe across potato fields, and I was really impressed during those years at the ingenuity, the independence, and the practicality that farmers have. Mm-hmm. And I learned all kinds of things. I learned how to do some plumbing when there wasn't work to do outside, or painting. Mm-hmm. Shingling, I even learned, shingling a water tower. So I had tremendous respect. It was Charlton Halsey who was the farmer for whom I worked for, I think it was 4 years in the summers in high school, my very first job. And I grew up in a part of Southampton Village that was basically our house. My dad was actually a doctor, so we didn't have a farm, but I was surrounded growing up with 1,000 acres of farmland from for people who know Southampton Village, from the hospital to Mecox Bay, 1,000 acres of farmland. So that was my playground. It was where I made forts in the rye. I was, I'm sure, a pain in the neck to the farmer next door. There was a Downs family. So I knew them well growing up, and so I was pretty much immersed in that environment as a kid. And as I say, great respect for people who are involved in agriculture. Mm-hmm. So I went away to college. Was living on the West Coast in the late 70s, and I came back in 1980 to visit family and friends. And lo and behold, there was a for sale sign on the farm next door. And I knew the family very well, as I was the pest in their barns and in their fields. But I was really shocked. It was a 10-generation farm. And I called them up. I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "John, our parents have passed away, and we have a $2.1 million inheritance tax. And we don't have $2.1 million. We have to sell the farm in order to pay the tax." So this was the federal inheritance tax at the time. Mm-hmm. And what was happening in the 70s was a huge appreciation in real property, especially on the South Fork. So a lot of farms got caught up in this problem of being land rich and cash poor, and also in many instances not having anticipated that they really got caught, and that was the case with the farm next door. When I actually encountered them, they were already in contract to sell the property, and unfortunately, it was a contract that was contingent upon subdivision approval. It took 5 years, and by the time they actually closed on the sale, they had a 47% penalty on top of the 2.2. So they ended up with next to nothing after all those many generations. So that was sort of the inspiration for me to think about moving back and setting up an organization that would work with landowners, all types of landowners, to give them options and show them how they can conserve the best of their land. It's not an all or nothing proposition. Recognizing that land for many people is their sole and largest, equity. So you can't sit down with someone and say, "Gee, this is nice land. Would you give it to us?" You have to really understand people's needs, goals, and circumstances, and understand their land, and identify that which is most important to protect. Provide some options for them to hold some for future equity for their kids or for retirement, whatever the case may be. Yes. But taking a real practical approach to conserving land. So together with a couple of classmates from high school and a couple of people from my parents' generation, one being the mayor of Southampton Village, who also was the chairman of the planning board in Southampton Town, who really, when I began to explain what a land trust could do, he said, "Oh my gosh, John, this is a great idea. I'll do anything I can." And so he served on the board. Why? Because by the time people come in for subdivision, it's often too late. Yes. And the idea of the land trust was really to work with landowners earlier. So in '83, I moved back with my new wife. It was a year of milestones. I got married, moved back from the West Coast to Southampton, and started the land trust. And its mission is to conserve Long Island's working farms, natural lands, and heritage for our communities now and in the future. So it started with very modestly. We had an idea, a certificate of incorporation, and just started from scratch. So
wonderful.
That's how it all started.
Nice. And then Dan, if you wanted to give a little background about yourself too.
Sure. So like John, I did grow up farming also, but I was actually in Maryland, and And though my family did not own a farm, we worked on farms in the summertime, picking sweet corn, mostly what I remember. And actually, I picked sweet corn with I never knew it then, but with my wife. And we did that all growing up. We started when we were about 4, and we were pretty near useless. I remember she would hold the bag open and I would flip the ears in. We had to get 50 of them in there, and we would miscount and dump the bags out. And I never particularly enjoyed it. I got to say, it was wet, it was early, and all I wanted to do was go home and go fishing. So we spent our summers picking corn in the morning until about noon, and then we would help with a little bit of irrigation pipe, and it was very similar down in Maryland. And then in the afternoons, they would cut us loose because we were young, and we would spend the afternoons fishing every stream and every pond. And so that's the way I grew up. And so my current wife, it was from a farming family up here, the Wickhams. And so we were in 4-H together until we were 18, basically until we couldn't be in 4-H together. We showed all kinds of things at the county fair. She was a much better 4-H'er than I was. We just liked to, me and her brothers would just kind of mess around and stuff, but she was much more serious. But nonetheless, we stayed in touch, and ultimately got married in 1996, having kind of gone our different directions to go to school and the like. And my wife Prudence was always very interested in her family's farm. She would always disappear from Maryland and come up here in the summertime, and I would be we would, like I said, we picked corn together for part of the year, but then she would leave, and she would come up to the family farm up here and work all summer, and she did it all through college. And when we got married, she really felt strongly that she wanted to come back to the farm. And so in 1997, we made a big move and took a very large pay cut and gave up our whole careers down there to do that. I was 29. And we moved up here and worked on her family's farm for 10 years, Wickham's Fruit Farm. And I learned really you don't learn as much as you think you know everything as a kid, but you don't learn that much until you actually really have to do it throughout the seasons. And so I learned a lot. And her Uncle Tom Wickham, a lifelong farmer, he really a good farmer, and I learned an awful lot from him. And it was not like I thought it was as a kid. It was definitely different, and through the seasons it's different too. You farm all winter too. You fix things and prep for the next year. So we did that for a decade, and like a lot of family farms, the farm is only so big. There was only one business, and it kind of became apparent that we needed to start another business. And I think we're going to get into this a little bit later in this discussion, but it's not so easy to start a new farming business. And so we did have access to the land, but we didn't have any equipment. But we had the knowledge, and certainly had the drive to do it. And so in about 2017, we started Saltaire Farm, which my wife farms full-time. But like I said, it's hard to get started, and so you kind of need another source of income. And about that time, a position opened here at the trust, and it was a position that was a mile down the road. It was North Fork, South Fork, but it fit all the things I knew how to do perfectly. And so I started there, simultaneously starting a farm business. And so I started the trust, and like John said, we preserve a lot of farmland. Though we do a lot of other things also now, even more. But at that time, it was a real push and there was a lot of land to conserve out there. But it's one thing to conserve the land; it's another thing to be able to use it for farming. And so I started out kind of mowing these big fields and going around all the different properties and just maintaining and the like. But I said to myself, we should. I know a lot of farmers that are looking for land. We should start a program. So I pushed that a little bit, and John says, well, we're already leasing to plenty of different farmers. I said, but we should have maybe a more formalized program. And so we started on a couple farms that we own with our Farms for the Future program, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But that's kind of my job. Kind of shifted to that, and that's kind of where we are today.
Nice. And just John, just looking at the Long Island, even from the 70s and 80s, and I guess even more so with the South Fork. There was more pressure on the South Fork to develop land than there was on the North Fork, I guess, through the 80s and 70s.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I typically say that the development that's occurred there is sort of 20 years ahead of what's happening up here on the North Fork. And so the good thing for the North Fork is there's lots to learn and adapt, take ideas that have worked or maybe didn't work to sort of avoid those. Mm-hmm. So there's been, a lot of cross communication over the years. Our board, is geographically representative of the East End and even further west on the island. So there's been a lot of cross-pollination of ideas over these 42 years among board members and so forth. So I think Southampton in a way has been a laboratory, mm-hmm. And I think the other towns have taken ideas and taken them to another level. Mm-hmm. So it's just how we learn. We learn from our successes and from our mistakes. I think that the challenges that have faced agriculture have certainly been the value of real estate and the pressure to see the land developed, but there are other things. There's all kinds of challenges. There's been a tremendous diversification in agriculture over the last 42 years, out of potatoes and cauliflower to vineyards and horticultural products and nursery, and there's equestrian. There are all these different components of agriculture that are really important. Having a diverse agricultural economy is really important to the future of farming here. And I think we've seen that happen. And so instead of a lot of wholesale, there's still wholesale, but a lot of direct sales, retail. And that has helped a lot of farms evolve and survive. Yes. And so those are the things that, anyway, we can help facilitate that. Working with our agricultural partners, we work very closely with Cornell Cooperative Extension, the Research Farm, the Farm Bureau, Farm Credit East. There are lots of organizations that are dedicated to assuring that farming as a business continues to thrive here, and that's really critical. Mm-hmm. If people can't make a living farming, then it's not gonna stay here.
No. And Dan, can you talk a little bit about the Farms for the Future program you mentioned and how that got started? Sure.
So, like I said earlier, that there was definitely. We had conserved this farmland, and there was people looking to try farming, and but not only try farming, we also had regular farmers, big commercial operations that were just looking for more farmland. So that's a component of the program too. It's just a straight leasing program. But more what I do is certainly I do the straight leasing program too, but we are trying to get new people started farming. And so we had bought a farm in Southold, the Charnews farm, which is what we call it. It's from the Charnews family, and it sticks. It's kind of we call it the Agricultural Center at Charnews Farm. It's its official name, but it's on Youngs Avenue. It's 23.5 acres, and it was just about the right size to what I felt to kind of start an incubator program. And kind of what we wanted to do is get new people started farming with new kind of niche type business. Like John said, we're not Long Island has moved away from huge fields of potatoes and cauliflower and that sort of thing. And not to say that we're not still growing that, but it's not the only thing that we're growing anymore. They're much smaller niche type businesses now, which I knew quite a bit about because we had done quite a bit of that on our farm. And so basically what we did is we prepped the farm. We put a couple wells in. We put a deer fence up, and we divided it up into 1 acre parcels. And we put a little more structure to the program and have a decent lease that we use for people. The program is 5 years. We obviously offer the fence and the well and the land and mentoring. And so we kind of show people, if they want, we show people kind of how to farm, field layout, tractor operation, tractor safety. We've even gone so far as to help people, recommend different types of equipment, where to get it, that sort of thing, because that was always my background. And so it started small. It started with just a few people, and people worked their way through the program. And of course, not like any incubator program, not everybody's going to succeed. But it's a 5-year program, and we kind of know if they make it to year 3, they're probably going to succeed. And the way it works is if they get to year 3, I start to look for land to move them out onto some of our outlying farmland to try to get them to expand. And that's the whole idea. We start everybody with 1 acre for 1 year. We didn't do that originally, but we learned that kind of the hard way, that you got to start people small. And an acre, nobody realizes how big an acre really is. And when you show them that acre that I have divided up, it looks a lot bigger than they thought. So everybody starts the same way. And then over that course of 5 years, we can move them up 3, 4, 5 acres. And then about then, we got to get them moved on to other things. But so the program started early on. Actually, one of the first people was Browder's Birds, Chris Browder, and he was one of my first people with the new lease and the new farmland. And we had several other people that year, and he continues to farm today. But and he did exactly what we wanted him to do. He got through the program, graduated out of the program onto some outlying farmland, expanded out of that, and ultimately bought some farmland that we had for sale. And that's, though not everybody is going to buy farmland, he went through the program and then bought farmland, and that's the ultimate goal of us, But over the years, the program has really caught on, and we have to select the people. We do have quite a bit of criteria now, because it's not this program isn't really for farmers that don't have any experience. We do like to see 1 to 3 years farming experience before we get them in the program. But we do have a team that helps me select the folks. And like John said, we have different partner organizations that we work with, Cornell, Soil and Water, NRCS, Farm Bureau. So we try to have a representative from at least one of those organizations. Plus, we try to have a couple board members, a North Fork farmer, a South Fork farmer, men, women. And so the team is about 8 people. And so they help me with this criteria, help me choose the farmers. And so that we do kind of a formal interview process, and that's the way they get in. And so every year we try to limit it, but last year I bet you we started 6 new people. This year, which was an awful lot. That was this year we tried to hold back a little more. We have about 3 new people this year, and plus the new ones from last year. And so along the way, I got some more staff. And so I have a very solid team now that I work with, that help me implement the leases and help with the tractor work. And so I have people on the ground. I have people in the office. I have me out in the field and in the office plenty. But we have a very good team that we all work together. And so we have the same program on the South Fork, all the way out in Amagansett. It's the same exact program with about the same number of people. And so we're over there once or twice a month. Unfortunately, the traffic makes it a little hard to get over there in a reasonable amount of time. And I wish it was easier to get there because we would spend more time over there.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, that's the way we got started, and it's we're able to raise money for it. We've expanded it enough that we made some other improvements, like we just put up a farm stand last year, because like we were saying earlier, that it's not so much wholesale anymore, though that's a component. The retail business has really gotten to be pretty good out here. And so the Charnews farm has, we do the whole thing. The farmers grow the product there, and then we have a way for them to sell it too. So we have a really nice farm stand that we had the Amish come up and put together for us, and really neat. And all the farmers have a table inside, so you can go and people can come in and see all types of products, from oysters to escargot, believe it or not, to all different lettuces, to medicinal herbs, to whatever the farmers are doing is being sold in that farm stand. Honey, we have honey. So it's definitely, so far so good. We just opened it up and people are just starting to get going with that. But that's going to be a really neat component, and we also have some equipment that people get into a co-op, and we had some equipment donated. And that's been very successful too. Again, it's not just about the land; it's about the infrastructure part of it also. Not so easy to get started, and so people sign up for the equipment too.
Yes, yeah, because I think it's important to have the land preserved and everything, but then in order to keep something running successfully is important. And do you see even farming it becoming more niche in like people specializing in certain crops or areas than having this giant farm? Obviously we have Wickham and other farms out here, but just looking at that for future farmers, more specialized, you see?
Yeah, it's going to be, it was definitely heading that way, and it's even more so now. I think the average farm size is about 6 acres on Long Island, and a lot of our folks or like I said, they start on 1 acre, and they're doing what they need to do on 3 acres, 1, 3, 5 acres, and yes, they're very specialized. We have an escargot grower. We've done wild game birds. We've done cattle. We've done hogs. We've done broiler chickens. These medicinal herbs. Chinese vegetables, Japanese vegetables, different, all different things. We have a group from Pakistan this year that have their own ideas. We have a small group of Latino people that are in a co-op that are farming together, and they went through the Cornell Small Farms program, and they're in their second year, have expanded to 3 acres, and boy, are they doing a good job and growing lots of things that they have in their country, and so it's a mix, and it's not going to be big, huge fields of sweet corn or long rows of cauliflower. We're not seeing any of that. We're seeing certainly a mix of different things.
Okay. And the other question, I think you touched on it a bit, but just how important maybe even immigrant labor is to the farms you support, and are there any changes or needs in the policy level to make it sustainable for everyone involved?
Well, so I'll start out on that. As I said earlier, there are many challenges that agriculture faces: at the price of land, labor, housing for labor. These are just the cost of farming, like the seed, the fertilizer, the equipment. So there are lots of challenges that the agricultural community faces, and labor. That's something that not only do we see it with the farmers that we work with, but we have a program also on the South Fork, a Quail Hill farm, which is that the trust operates. That's an apprenticeship program, and we have a real problem with housing them. because the cost of housing for labor is enormous. So we've had to actually build some housing, ag housing for the apprentices in order to be able to house them, because the costs are prohibitive to rent properties. So you see, lots of farm operations are really facing that. So it's not just about the bodies, and the bodies are important too, and that's where the immigrant population is really critical to agriculture across the country. And I think there seems to be a growing recognition of that, the important role of migrant workers to the success of agriculture, and which I think is really important. And so it is a huge component to the success of agriculture, having a workforce to do what needs to be done in order to produce and harvest the crops that are grown.
Yes, definitely. And then you also had a documentary called Growing Farmers, which was a nice, beautiful and honest portrait of modern farming on Long Island. What inspired this creation? How did you choose whose stories to tell?
Well, I mean, the irony is, Dan and I were talking about it. I mean, it's actually I had to watch it again. So much has happened since it actually was done, and it was a great project. The idea again was to shine a light on agriculture and the growing role that the trust was playing with new farmers, and essentially, what you see there is really the infancy of the Farms for the Future initiative that we started, and so that was great. But now we're so much further beyond that, in terms of the acreage that we have to make available to people, and I think the other part that Dan mentioned is, facilitating, making it possible for people to acquire farmland is really amazing and important. So because you want farmers, especially those that are successful in the incubator program, they need to control their own destiny, and as the price of farmland, whether it's protected or not, goes up, the accessibility to that land is really important. On the South Fork, that is even more evident, because there's a significant non-farmer population that has been acquiring protected farmland, and so the value of protected farmland, this is farmland without the right to build houses on it, is trading for as much as $300,000 an acre. And that's way beyond what a food production farmer can afford, from a financial perspective. So that's a whole, another question. I think the one thing I want to just touch on is, so how do we acquire this land to begin with, and that is in large measure sometimes through donation. So the land that in Amagansett that we have the Farms for the Future program going on, and where Quail Hill Farm is located, is all land that was donated to us by actually a former board member who owned about 230 acres, and over time, in circumstances, she ended up donating, most of it, really all of the farmland, to the trust. But that's an unusual way. Typically, we're buying farmland, and this is how we interface and work very closely with our public partners. Suffolk County with their farmland protection program, the first in the country, first of its kind. Purchasing development rights, the right to put houses on property. Farmer continues to own the land, They just can't put houses on it. But the most valuable right is sold to the county. That this program began in the 70s to basically ensure that there was the farmland that we have here would be protected for that purpose for generations to come. And then the towns modeled that program. So when properties would come up for sale, and there needed to be, it might be developed, or and someone needed to jump in quick, we might negotiate a purchase of the property, but then we would go to the town or the county to purchase the development rights at the same time, sort of a simultaneous transaction. Yeah. We've done many of those with our public partners. So we create the opportunity through working with the owner of that land, enter into a contingent contract contingent upon partnering with the public, our public partners like the towns. And then we'll buy that property, and then in a process not unlike what we do for the program, leasing land, we would put out an RFP and sell that protected farmland to established farmers or new farmers. A great example of that is Eight Hands Farm here. Okay. That property was on Cox Lane was to be developed. I'm pretty sure it was pretty close to having a subdivision plan on it. And we were able to acquire it, sell the development rights to the town. We managed it for a few years, made some improvements to it. Dan
fixed the barns, fixed the well, turned it into a functional farm again, and leased it for a couple years to Sangley Farms as part of our leasing program.
And then ultimately we put it on the market. We put out an RFP, and the folks at Eight Hands Farm acquired it.
Yeah, that was a good move. Tom Geppel, who runs that farm, his daughter was taking violin lessons with my daughter, and so we used to sit at recitals together. And he was very interested in farming, would ask a lot of questions. And one day he asked, one of those recitals, he asked if we had anything for sale at the trust, and we had a couple farms for sale. And we took him around, and several other people too. And ultimately he ended up buying it, and you're very proud of that. He's done a very good job there. That's quite a nice business he has there.
Yes.
So the interplay between the trust is with our public partners is really important. On the South Fork last year, we acquired 27 acres of farmland that was potentially going to be sold for development, and the land down there, of course, is absolutely just. It's really just mind-blowing how expensive it is. Mm-hmm. But we ended up buying this 27 acres for $48 million. Now it would never have, the town would never have acquired the development rights on that property without us bringing about $18 million of private money to the table. So we basically were able to enter into a contract with the owners of that 27 acres. Again, it was a contingent contract, contingent upon us raising, private money to buy it, and then simultaneously selling the development rights to the town of Southampton. And then subsequently, now we are in contract with some new farmers who have been in the incubator program, and who hopefully will get their financing together to be able to actually acquire it from us. So it's coming full circle. So the other piece that we play is to actually raise private capital to supplement public funds to do some of these acquisitions, because the land values are just simply so high.
And is there any grant funding as well that can applying?
the best thing that's happened to us all on the East End in terms of making these projects possible is the Community Preservation Fund that started in '99. That the 5 East End towns have a way, a sort of sustainable process of generating money for conservation purposes. The Land Trust, many other organizations, local banks, some people in the real estate community, the group for the East End and Nature Conservancy. Many organizations worked very closely with Fred Thiel and Ken Laval at the time in our state Assembly and Senate to get that program in place, basically adapting programs that existed in Massachusetts, Martha's Vineyard. So a 2% real estate transfer tax collected by the county for the towns for conservation purposes. So that, if we didn't have that, the capacity to protect what's here would be really limited to state monies and county monies, and there's just no way that they can justify spending state money, a lot of state money here, when the money goes so much further elsewhere. It happens, and thankfully we do get some of that. It's essentially in a sense it's grant money. It's yes. Public money for the purposes of conservation. But they're also buying something. They're buying the development rights, and so it's not exactly a grant. It's a program that is partners with us very, very nicely, especially because we can often move much quicker than a municipality or the county or the state to acquire properties that are under threat of development. So that's another, generally speaking, a really important role that the Peconic Land Trust plays.
And I was just curious, is there any other, when going after these properties that are available, you mentioned having to move on it pretty quick. Has there been any situations where you've had to go back and forth with the owners, and then there's developers that are wanting to acquire the land?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And we haven't won all of the negotiations we've been in over the years, but we've won a lot, and that really comes down to really working with those sellers, especially if they're farmland owners who have some connection to the land. If we can come close between what we can raise privately and what the town or the county can bring to the table for development rights, we can get close to competing with private sales. But sometimes we don't make it. So it's constant. I mean, another aspect of this, goes back to working with landowners before they have to sell the land, and again, based on their goals, needs, and circumstances, and the land that they own, showing them how they can hold on to it and keep some equity in. And again, often that may end up with the town playing a role by purchasing development rights on a portion of the property. So there are all these different tools out there that we apply to each situation in different ways, because no two projects are the same.
Yes. And I guess in terms of even farming, I guess one other question in terms of farming, Dan, you've introduced small weather stations and irrigation systems. Are there other tools or strategies that are helping modernize farming without pricing people out? Or
Sure. We like I said, we work closely with Cornell, and of course they do a lot of research on different methods. Mostly, it's all about the methods, and so kind of gone are the days of these of big open fields and big fields of potatoes and that sort of thing. But these are much smaller farms now, and so we use really very interesting methods with permanent cover crops in the summer. Summer cover crops that are to reduce erosion and things like that, and planting those cover crops between the rows now, and only tilling what you need, and what we call zone tilling, and where you only you till right into the cover crop, and so you never actually plow anything. So we use the no-till methods, and we use no-till grain drills, grass waterways, that sort of thing. So a lot of new methods. A lot of these methods, though it seems expensive up front, which they are, some of them, in the long term, it really does help with the weed control and things like that. And so with my program, we work closely with Cornell, and the farmers work closely with me to kind of show everybody how to do this. And I know it's a hard step. It seems like an extra step. We go round and around with these summer cover crops and things like that. But in the end, it is proven that it does help a lot with your weed control and water retention and soil erosion and things like that. And so, yes, we try to use all the latest techniques, these weather stations to reduce your, that kind of tells you when you can get out and spray and tells you what the humidity is in the wind and all that. So we actually have one of the weather stations on our farm. So if you get on your iPhone for weather, and you're anywhere close to Wickman Fruit Farm, that's where it's actually coming from, is our little weather station. So it's just kind of interesting. The Halseys on the South Fork have one also. But yes, we do. We try to use the latest methods, no doubt about that, and we get a lot of support for that.
And of course, it's worth the investment ultimately because it improves the bottom line.
That's right.
So the business of farming is really critical. So
yes.
These reduce the use of things that chemicals or what have you that you don't need to put as much on if you're really attuned to the the weather of the moment. So it's really about fine tuning the process. And of course, I think a lot of farmers are involved in organic growing as well, and but there are also things that are applied to organic
organics are
so again, you still the extent to which the technology can be used to really minimize the use of products, organic or non or synthetic, all the better.
Because that is a big thing now is our organic growers, and I can't say it's any harder really to grow like that. You just use different methods, and of course the equipment now is so much better. The weeding techniques are so much better. They're working on that all the time. And I was going to say also that we've actually, with my work with Wickman Fruit Farm, we actually developed over the years a grass seed mix that we would plant in our orchards that we just trial and errored for a while, and it's a mix that the grass blades are very thin on it, and so it doesn't hold insects hardly at all, and it's very slow growing. You only mow it a couple times a year, and it kind of caught on, and so I'm using that in my program. And so that you can actually go to Cauliflower Association and buy this mix, which is kind of neat. And so our farmers are using it now, which is kind of interesting. But that's one of the methods we use between rows is these permanent grasses.
Yeah, and that sort of relates to, I think, how do farmers adapt to a changing climate? And because that's definitely there's change and again, this technology helps them transition and adapt. The regenerative agriculture is helpful in that regard as well. And and beginning to anticipate sea level rise and things like that. it's the climate is changing. There's no question about it.
Is.
And Dan in his farm, is and the Wickham farm in general is very much attuned to sea level rise.
Right. So it's a dubious honor, but we have the longest dike system on the North Fork. And it stretches over 2 miles around Wickham Creek, West Creek, and Peconic Bay in the front. And so people can say what they want about climate change, but something is happening. And so we see it as a farmer. We see it with the sea level rise. It's not very hard to document. Because there's spots on our dike that during high tide, when I moved up here, would never even touch the bottom of the dike. And now, during high tide, they touch the bottom of the dike. So it's really not that complicated. Something is changing. And of course, with these high tides, it pushes the groundwater up in the fields behind the dike. And so land that was marginal, that we farmed 20 years ago, is not really usable now, just that little bit. And so things are changing. Unfortunately, things are changing quicker than you would hope. And just the weather in general is changing. I mean, our springs are cold and wet and windy. This year it's just been eight Saturdays in a row it's rained. I mean, it's just going to be, you just got to adapt to it. You got to learn to grow with that. And we're always researching different things. These high tunnels that you're seeing a lot of, you could get a grant for them because, the federal government didn't say much about climate change, but they know what's happening, and we have to learn how to farm. And these high tunnels are a cheap way to farm inside, basically. And you're seeing these big, tall greenhouses around with plastic over top of them, and that's a way to kind of mitigate some of this climate change. And that's an example of technology for sure.
Yes, definitely. And I was curious, for the Peconic Land Trust, do they also acquire land that isn't for farming?
Oh, yeah.
That's also for nature or preserve?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That goes back again to the mission, which is working farms, which goes to the point. It's not just about protecting the resource. It's about enabling agriculture to continue, but also natural lands. And that's everything from watershed protection for groundwater to shoreline protection, for access and woodland for trails. So we've got some great preserves on the North Fork, in particular, the Broad Cove in Riverhead, which we are doing in partnership with the state of New York. This is an instance, just like farmland, where this property was going to be developed, and we were able to acquire it from the owners. We were in competition with developers on that, and we had to move quickly. Sometimes it takes the state longer than some of our local municipalities to pay us back. But in essence, what we're doing, hopefully soon, will be selling the development rights and conservation easement to the state of New York. So what do we do in that situation? We have to cobble together the funding to make that acquisition. And in that instance, we had 6 donors who lent us the majority of those funds to purchase that property and take it out of harm's way. And then when we close with the state, we'll be able to take care of all of those loans. We've So that's another sort of mechanism that we use when timing is absolutely critical.
Was the Broad Cove, was that one that was acquired in 2021? Or am I thinking of a different one where there was...
No, I think you're right. I think it was December 2021. Yeah. I think you're right.
Because I think I had just walked on the... It was like a duck farm type.
Yes, that's it. Yes.
Yeah, I walked on that trail the other day. It was really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, it is nice.
Yeah, so it's it's so during this time we've been putting improvements in there, and we also up here on the North Fork is the Wolf Preserve and the Reese Preserve on Hog's Neck, and that's what total about 50 acres. I think.
Yeah, about that. Yeah,
with a trail system on there, and we're working to acquire more land on Hog's Neck to sort of extend the access to the community for trails. So that's a big part of what we do. We have some extensive wooded preserves in North Amagansett with trails there as well. Okay. And some of that land was donated to us as well. So it's donation, it's acquisition, it's using private capital to do different things. It's so as basically as an organization, we're a public charity, a private organization, a nonprofit that really depends on private contributions to do the work that we do. And there's a great interplay with our public partners, great cooperation, and so we leverage our own funds with the public's funds as well.
And I think you've touched on it a bit, but are there any other future plans that you have down the road program-wise? Or I know you mentioned continue to acquire land, and but were there any other things you hope to accomplish?
Well, I mean, I think we're involved in lots of things, and I mentioned briefly, our relationship with indigenous people on the island. We have protected land in the Shinnecock Hills that is very important to the Shinnecock people. At burial sites and so forth. We have helped a new land trust get started that's led by 5 indigenous women. That's the Peconic Land Trust. And so we're really dedicated to protecting their history and the sites that are significant, especially burial sites that are all over Long Island, because while my family has been here, I guess now we're up to the 14th generation in my branch. The indigenous people were here for 400, are here for 400 generations. So there's a long time of a lot more time occupying this incredible part of the world than us. So I think it's important to recognize their history and to help them protect what's important to them as well. So that's a big area. And the coastal ponds that we have, especially on the South Fork, are really in great stress because of excess nitrogen that is coming into them. So we have blue-green algae blooms, and which is hazardous to humans and to animals, and so we're doing a lot of work with communities like around Sag Pond, Sagaponic, really working to be sort of the source of private funding to work with Cornell Cooperative Extension, Center for Clean Water Technology at Stony Brook, the Perfect Earth Project, just all these different organizations that bring different skills and talents and science to resolve some of these problems. Georgia Pond, we're also working there with the Friends of Georgia Pond Foundation. Again, with all these other partners to improve the water quality of these coastal ponds that are essentially models that hopefully will be applied to other ponds on both forks that are impacted by septic systems, lawn fertilizer, legacy fertilizer that's in the groundwater from decades of agricultural use. There's of course there are things that we can't control so much, like atmospheric deposition, which is also a source of nitrogen. But we need to take care of our waterways, our bays and our ponds, and that means also homeowners upgrading their septic systems and looking for sustainable ways to manage their lawns that don't require a lot of fertilizers. Hey, what's wrong with a dandelion, right? As far as I'm concerned. But so there's a lot of education that the trust does, and we will continue to do. We have a program called Connections, and 50, 60 opportunities for people who support us and people who are not yet supporters, but hopefully will be, to get to visit farms and go on trails, go with birders, people who bring unique aspects of what's around us and educate us all, for kids and for grown-ups, etc. And I think another really important area that we work in is public policy. And, working really from the federal level down to the local level to increase incentives for conservation, reform estate tax policy, something we worked on and will continue to work on as that issue flares up from time to time. I think just to give you a sort of the nugget of an idea that we have been pushing for a couple of decades now, is the idea that land of conservation value be provided with a way to defer the estate tax as long as that land isn't developed, both on the state level and the federal level. Why should that be taxed at its development potential when it's actually being used and providing a conservation benefit? Why force people to sell, as I witnessed in the 70s and the 80s, and is the reason why the trust was created to begin with, was the loss of a farm, 10 generations, because they didn't have the capital to pay that tax. Had they been able to defer that tax as long as that land was farmed, it would still be there today. But that's the kind of thinking that we try to do at all levels of government, to look at how can public policy continue to make conservation possible and rewarding, so that we can keep as much of what we know and love about this place intact.
And I had another question. I don't know if you can say, but more so within the Greenport area, are there any other future projects or possible land acquisition?
To me, I think another incredible and really important resource is working waterfront lands, because, of course, that's very attractive for condos and hotels and housing. But if we don't provide a way for people who work on the water, growing shellfish, in innumerable ways, we're going to lose, a really valuable part of our community. So we should be working with and helping the owners of those properties, give them alternatives to selling that land for commercial, non-working waterfront purposes.
Because we had a lot of oyster packing.
Yes.
Which have now become condos. There is still the abandoned one in East Marion, which would be nice to preserve somehow, even make it like a nature museum, oyster history.
Yeah, simple. That's a project that we didn't succeed on.
No,
but obviously so we're very much aware of that property, but a great project where we did succeed is our Shellfisher Preserve on Hawks Neck. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
That was owned by the Plock family. It was the Shelter Island Oyster Company. It was a hatchery that was built in the 60s. And again, we partnered very closely with Cornell Cooperative Extension, their marine program. And it's largely been renovated and updated in many ways. It's sort of, it never stops.
It never stops. It's one of our most challenging projects because it's right on the water and it's susceptible to different storms.
Yeah.
And so we spend a lot of time putting it back together.
Yeah.
But we do have 3 different oyster growers there and a hatchery, and it's a state-of-the-art facility the way it is, and that's all part of our Farms for the Future program down there also.
Nice.
So there's so many aspects to what makes this place what it is. And we care, the Peconic Land Trust cares about all of it.
Yes.
and any way that, especially when there's an owner who's looking for options, alternatives to simply just selling it, we're here to help. And that's a key part of the work that we do.
And Dan, I was curious what your thoughts are just for what are your hopes for the future of farming on Eastern Long Island? Do you see it continuing to be steady and alive and well moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, farming certainly has its challenges. We all know that. It's as more people move out to the South Fork, to the North Fork, it does get harder and harder. On my farm, we have the last the little piece of woodland. It never belonged to us, and it's being developed now, and we're going to have another neighbor there, and like the builder said, it's a small house. It's 3-acre lot. It's a small house they're putting up. It's only 6,500 square feet. And I was like, wow, that's really not that small of a house. And so there's, and they're going to have I'm sure they're going to have a lot of opinions about how we should run our farm. And they certainly did orient their house to look out across our farm. But with that being said, the neighbors, we do very well with our neighbors. They like us. And we all got to live here. We all got to get along. So that's all part of it. And people are interested in the local produce that's being produced for sure. And the different kinds of things that they produce, the flowers, the nursery stock, all the different types of food. This whole farm to table movement was a big thing, and that's, people love that, and they're willing to pay the extra price for the fresh stuff, and that's one thing I do want to say, that it's if you want to keep farming alive, you really got to shop at the local farm stands. And yes, the stuff's going to be a little bit more expensive than it is in King Cullen. But it's all fresh stuff. You're supporting the local farmers, and it's in their whole business.
And it tastes better.
Yes.
It tastes better. And so I feel like if you're willing to work hard enough, I think there's definitely a next generation of farmers, and certainly with our program, I'm encouraged by the interest level. I mean, there's just an awful lot of interest in it. So yes, I would say it's certainly still a viable industry, and I certainly do hope we can keep it that way.
Yes.
And this is where the education is also important with our public officials, and getting them out to farms so that they understand, the challenges that agriculture faces, very fortunate in South Old Town, for example. I have a farmer who's the supervisor, Al Krepsky. But it's hard to be in politics and be a farmer, and there aren't enough of them. To be on the different boards, to be able to counter misperceptions about agriculture, and so that's really important, is educating our public officials and electeds as to the challenges and that agriculture faces, and the importance of it as part of our our agricultural economy, but also our resort economy. It's the traffic is rough in the fall,
and it is a little bit, and people complain bitterly about it, but I don't complain about it. It doesn't last long.
Traffic is tough on the South Fork all the time, and that just reminds me of another piece of the equation that we really should not avoid talking about, and that's the need for affordable housing in general. And then this is where the North Fork can learn from some of the mistakes on the South Fork. Is that we're very fortunate to have this community housing fund that is a 0.5% to generate funding for affordable housing. The Peconic Land Trust was very much in support of that. I think that on the South Fork, it's happened late in the game, and you can see that by the very fact that we have this enormous trade parade of people, blue collar folks, the plumbers, the electricians, the teachers, the nurses, who can't afford to live on the South Fork, who come every single day, and they leave every single day, and it is an enormous traffic challenge, and that's where the North Fork has the opportunity to do things. I said earlier that I see the North Fork 20 years behind the development, but it's 20 years ahead of the potential to address that issue, because we didn't address it well on the South Fork, and I think it's how do we do that? How do we enable local people to stay in their community, as well as people who work in the community to be able to afford to live there? Because it's all you have to do is look at us every day. Just an aerial view of the South Fork every single day to know that conserving land, but also thinking about how do we take care of housing in the long run for the North Fork. There'll be even more traffic.
Yes, I think we get some of the trade parade coming this way, then going over to Shelter Island.
Yeah, that's right.
We do.
So we're getting some of that. But it is a challenge because we want to preserve the land, but at the same time we need space for housing. But
we do. And we have a little bit of housing at the trust that we use for farming. One thing, the greenest house is the one that's already built, of course. We don't need to necessarily tear them all down and rebuild them again. And so a few years ago, we moved the 1700s Cape Cod, the Case House. And we moved it about a mile through the farm fields up onto Horton's Lane. And so that was a kind of checked all the boxes in our mission, one of which is heritage. And what could be more than a 1700s Cape Cod? We moved that, and we restored that, but we also renovated it enough so that a farm family could live in it. And so it's got a brand new heating system. It's been fully insulated, all new electric, but we kept its original character also. And we took one of our graduates from our program, and we ran this through an RFP process, and So if you drive down Horton's Lane, you'll see the most beautiful 5-acre farm with a very original looking Cape Cod there that was very carefully rebuilt. And it just so happens I live in a Cape Cod that's about that same year. And mine is also very carefully rebuilt. And so I had a soft spot for that type of house. Mm-hmm. And so we preserved a really neat old house. We provide some affordable farm labor housing. And we gave that farmer a place to live and a place to farm. And so that was a really neat project. It took about 3 years.
Wow. Well, that's definitely important.
Yes.
And I think just lastly, for people that are listening, where can people go to learn more and get involved to support the trust?
Well, certainly the website is a great place to go. We're in the process of upgrading different aspects of it, and so it's a tremendous place to learn all the different things that we're involved in, which, as I say, is mind-boggling when you look at the breadth of things that we're involved in and the number of projects that we've completed. But as I say, it wouldn't happen without people supporting us. It's really critical. Sometimes there's a lot of confusion, especially on the South Fork. People think that we get the 2% transfer tax, and so, we'll send out a letter to folks, every year to support our annual fund, and people will write back, well, I already paid you when I bought my house.
Yeah.
And, no, you didn't. So it's really important for people to make that distinction. We work very closely with the town to do things, but we're really about working with the owners of land, helping them understand the options, the conservation options, and help them plan even where their future equity, where to retain it, the most appropriate location, etc., and raising private capital to do any number of things. Acquisition is obvious to like I suggested with the farm in Bridgehampton that we acquired last year. But also improvements to coastal ponds for water quality purposes. Whatever the case may be, we're raising private money to do a lot of different things. And of course, we need to have a professional staff to do that work, and that's what the annual fund is all about. So we really encourage people to spread the word. We don't get the 2% money. We depend on private contributions to do the work that we do, and the more people who support us, the more that we can do, and that's important.
Definitely. No, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on today, and both of you share your story and your work with the Peconic Land Trust. It's really all important for this region. So thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 179 with John V.H. Halsey and Dan Heston. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.